If you're like I was, you've probably thought about leaving medical school, medicine, accounting, law school, oil and gas, firefighting, anything. It doesn't matter what the job is, for a very long time. If you were excited about your life, you wouldn't be watching this video. And that's a life I understand. Because I thought about leaving medical school every single day since the first day of medical school. 8 interminable years later, after finishing medical school and then finishing a psychiatry residency, I was finally capable of overcoming my fear of judgment, my fear of acceptance, and honestly, my fear of taking responsibility for my life. And I left and chose what was in my heart. My goal today is to get you there faster than I did. Before we get started, let's agree on one thing. One day, you're going to have to do it. And it gets harder the longer you wait. On the other side of that decision, though, is your life. If you're ready to go make that choice, go do it. Right now. Close this video. Get off the internet for the love of your own existence and do it. For the rest of us that are still here, which would have included me pretty much every day of the 8 years that I was in medicine, I suggest that we begin with some grace. And I don't mean a prayer, although we will need help from anywhere we can get it. No, I mean self-grace from the shame. I beat myself up for years for not having the courage to quit medicine. This did not help me at all. If anything, it made it harder to ultimately make the decision that I needed to make, because as the years went on, I kept thinking less and less of who I was. I hated myself for not having enough courage to leave medicine. Yeah. And that has been one of the hardest things to overcome since I left. It's been a journey. As I look back now, it probably wasn't until I had enough courage to admit that I wasn't capable of figuring it out and that I needed to go get some help that I finally got a little closer to figuring out how to leave. So, for 3 years straight, I went to the same therapist and I saw her every week at the same time in the same place. I talked about my medicine situation with my friends. I talked about it with my then girlfriend, now wife. I talked about it with anybody I could. I was trying to seek counsel. I was trying to figure out my way through something that had had led me to gathering $200,000 worth of loans. It was something I felt like I'd wasted 6 years, 7 years, 8 years of my life on. I was trying to process all of it. What I see now is that those conversations allowed me to start to understand why it was so hard for me to make the choice. If you're not ready to move forward and go do the thing that you know, like deep down in your heart, is the best thing that you need to do for yourself, there's probably a reason. And maybe it makes sense to go talk to somebody to try to figure out what that reason is. And here, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to limit the shame. In those moments, it feels really good to shame yourself. It feels like you're controlling something inside of this like muck that you're in. It's like, if I just shame myself, maybe I could beat myself up and, cause myself to never, ever do that again. But when you do that, you actually cement yourself back into that situation. You're not actually solving the present. You're not moving forward into the future. You're only creating paralysis. And at the end of the day, you're keeping yourself from the answers that you seek, because you can't undo the past. Only took me 7.5 years to understand that. Whew. The truth of my situation was that in 2014, when I had a decision to make, whenever I could have declined going to medical school, I was not ready to choose myself. I was only ready to choose myself 8 years later in 2022. To be ready to take the responsibility of owning my life for me in my own life's curriculum, it required that I go to medical school when I never wanted to go to medical school, and I become a psychiatrist when I never wanted to become a psychiatrist. That was my life's curriculum. That's what I needed to finally be able to say that I didn't want to go to medical school. Were there shorter paths than that? Yes. Are there longer paths than that? Absolutely. Are either one of those paths the paths that I took? No, they're not. I cannot go back and undo what I did. All I can do is learn from it and understand it was what I needed. It got me ready to be able to make the choices that I'm making today. Being able to admit that that's what I needed, that I just wasn't ready, has been the hardest part of the journey, because it admits that I just wasn't capable back then. But it also helps me not have to live with the shame as much anymore. I used to joke with my therapist that the worst thing that ever happened to me was that I went to medical school. Yeah. I've had a pretty good life, I must say. Remember, whatever you have endured has gotten you here. That's been a part of your own readiness to be able to make the next choice for you. If you don't think your past has mattered, you're wrong. It is serving you right now as we speak, whether or not you admit it or not. People sometimes ask me, how come you didn't just cash the paychecks, buy the wife a Beamer, and move the kids into private school? And people did ask me versions of this question. I think I added that last part because I'm a public school kid. I couldn't give up on being myself because I'd felt that once. I'd felt what it felt like to wake up excited to go to work. I had felt what it felt like to feel alive inside of my work. And no matter how much money I made, it did not compare to the aliveness that I used to feel back when I was making $27,000 a year as a teacher. That was my first job. It was simple, it was meaningful, I got paid very little, but when Sunday night would come around and I would start to think about Monday morning, I got excited. That was a feeling I never had while I was in medicine. Some people experience that inside of medicine. I was just not one of those people. As one of my attending physicians was fond of saying, medicine is like an arranged marriage. Arranged marriages work out for some people. For some people, arranged marriages just don't work out. But if I found that aliveness once, surely I'd be able to find it again, right? At least that's what I hoped for every day that I woke up, especially in those last couple of years of residency. And for a while, I thought I might be able to rebuild it inside of residency by teaching medical students. I actually taught a weekly psychiatry seminar to medical students while I was in residency. And it was fun. It was a cool experience, but it didn't feel like I used to feel because I wasn't the same person that I'd been before I went to medical school. All that time had made me into a different person. I could not look to the past for answers for what my future needed to be like. I'd be lying to you if I told you I didn't keep trying though. It wasn't until I landed the perfect dream part-time job that I only worked for half the week while I could use the other half of the week to go surf that I finally broke. With the cushest job imaginable, seeing as little patients as I could possibly tolerate, I was still depressed and I still felt trapped, and I knew I wasn't getting closer to the person that I knew was inside of me. If anything, I was getting farther away. And finally, I met rock bottom, and there I found my way out. Necessity. I still, just like it was 8 years before, whenever I had the opportunity to not go to medical school, just had to do it. I had to choose what was in my heart, and I did, finally. To stay any longer was to risk everything. I had no other options anymore because I'd found the best option and it still didn't work. I had tried my best to stay in medicine and keep my personal integrity, building year after year after year the best available option that I thought would help me be able to survive inside of medicine. And all of them were not enough. It was very clear. I could not be happy and be a doctor. And none of this was medicine's fault. It was simply because I never wanted to do it. And ultimately, when I left, I had no plan. I had to figure everything out for the past 2 years. So how did I do it? Well, I had to. The question I have for you is, will you wait until your back to is against the wall and you have no other choice? Or will you just do it? If you're lost and don't know what to do next, I have probably been there. If I haven't been there, I'm happy to just be a supportive resource in the comments section. You can also subscribe to my channel. I'm planning to post more videos in the future where I discuss more themes and how to bridge from a career that you don't like into a career that you love. Let's take the next step today to building a life that we love.